Episode 19. Well, I'd better get on. Eat your eggs while they're warm, Harry. Looking careworn, she left the room. Ron still seemed slightly punch-drunk. He was shaking his head experimentally like a dog trying to rid its ears of water. "Don't you get used to her if she's staying in the same house?" Harry asked. "Well, you do," said Ron. "But if she jumps out at you unexpectedly like then—" "It's pathetic," said Hermione furiously, striding away from Ron as far as she could go and turning to face him with her arms folded once she had reached the wall. "You don't really want her around forever?" Ginny asked Ron incredulously. When he merely shrugged, she said, "Well, Mum's going to put a stop to it if she can. I bet you anything." "How's she going to manage that?" asked Harry. "She keeps trying to get Tonks around for dinner. I think she's hoping Bill will fall for Tonks instead. I hope he does. I'd much rather have her in the family." "Yeah, that'll work," said Ron sarcastically. "Listen, no bloke in his right mind's going to fancy Tonks when Fleur's around. I mean, Tonks is okay looking when she isn't doing stupid things to her hair and her nose, but—" "She's a damn sight nicer than Flam," said Ginny.
"And she's more intelligent. She's an aura," said Hermione from the corner.
"Fleur's not stupid. She was good enough to enter the Triwizard Tournament," said Harry.
"Not you as well," said Hermione bitterly.
"I suppose you like the way Flam says 'Harry,' do you?" asked Ginny scornfully. "No," said Harry, wishing he hadn't spoken. "I was just saying Fleur." "I'd much rather have Tonks in the family," said Ginny. "At least she's a laugh."
"Well, she hadn't been much of a laugh lately," said Ron. "Every time I've seen her, she looked more like Moaning Myrtle." "That's not fair," snapped Hermione. "She still hasn't got over what happened, you know. I mean, he was her cousin."
Harry's heart sank. They had arrived at Sirius. He picked up a fork and began shoveling scrambled eggs into his mouth, hoping to deflect any invitation to join in this part of the conversation.
"Tonks and Sirius barely knew each other," said Ron. "Sirius was in Azkaban half her life, and before that their families never met." "That's not the point," said Hermione. "She thinks it was her fault he died."
"How does she work that one out?" asked Harry, in spite of himself.
"Well, she was fighting Bellatrix Lestrange, wasn't she? I think she feels that if only she had finished her off, Bellatrix couldn't have killed Sirius." "That's stupid," said Ron. "It's survivor's guilt," said Hermione. "I know Lupin's tried to talk her round, but she's still really down. She's actually having trouble with her metamorphosing."
"With her—"
"She can't change her appearance like she used to," explained Hermione. "I think her powers must have been affected by shock or something."
"I didn't know that could happen," said Harry.
"Nor did I," said Hermione. "But I suppose if you're really depressed—"
The door opened again, and Mrs. Weasley popped her head in. "Jenny," she whispered, "come downstairs and help me with the lunch." "I'm talking to this lot," said Ginny, outraged. "No," said Mrs. Weasley, and withdrew. "She only wants me there so she doesn't have to be alone with Phlegm," said Ginny crossly. She swung her long red hair around in a very good imitation of Fleur and pranced across the room with her arms held aloft like a ballerina. "You lot had better come down quickly too," she said as she left. Harry took advantage of the temporary silence to eat more breakfast. Hermione was peering into Fred and George's boxes, though every now and then she cast sideways looks at Harry. Ron, who was now helping himself to Harry's toast, was still gazing dreamily at the door.
"What's this?"
Hermione asked eventually, holding up what looked like a small telescope. "Dunno," said Ron, "but if Fred and George have left it here, it's probably not ready for the joke shop yet, so be careful." "Your mum said the shop's going really well," said Harry. "Said Fred and George have got a real flair for business." That's an understatement, said Ron. They're raking in the galleons. I can't wait to see the place. We haven't been to Diagon Alley yet because Mum says Dad's got to be there for extra security and he's been really busy at work. But it sounds excellent. And what about Percy? Asked Harry. The third eldest Weasley brother had fallen out with the rest of the family. Is he talking to your Mum and Dad again? No, said Ron. But he knows your dad was right all along now about Voldemort being back.
Dumbledore says people find it far easier to forgive others for being wrong than for being right, said Hermione. I heard him telling your mom, Ron.
Sounds like the sort of mental thing Dumbledore would say, said Ron. He's going to be giving me private lessons this year, said Harry, conversationally. Ron choked on his bit of toast, and Hermione gasped. You kept that quiet, said Ron. I only just remembered, said Harry, honestly. He told me last night in your broom shed. Blimey, private lessons with Dumbledore, said Ron, looking impressed. I wonder why he's... His voice tailed away. Harry saw him and Hermione exchange looks. Harry laid down his knife and fork, his heart beating rather fast considering that all he was doing was sitting in bed. Dumbledore had said to do it. Why not now? He fixed his eyes on his fork, which was gleaming in the sunlight streaming into his lap, and said, I don't know exactly why he's going to be giving me lessons, but I think it must be because of the prophecy. Neither Ron nor Hermione spoke. Harry had the impression that both had frozen. He continued, still speaking to his fork, the one they were trying to steal at the ministry.
Nobody knows what it said, though, said Hermione quickly. It got smashed.
Although the prophet says, began Ron, but Hermione said, shh. The prophet's got it right, said Harry, looking up at them both with great effort. Hermione seemed frightened, and Ron amazed. That glass ball that smashed wasn't the only record of the prophecy. I heard the whole thing in Dumbledore's office. He was the one the prophecy was made to, so he could tell me. From what it said, Harry took a deep breath, it looks like I'm the one who's got to finish off Voldemort. At least it said neither of us could live while the other survives. The three of them gazed at one another in silence for a moment. Then there was a loud bang, and Hermione vanished behind a puff of black smoke. Hermione! Shouted Harry and Ron. The breakfast tray slid to the floor with a crash. Hermione emerged, coughing, out of the smoke, clutching the telescope and sporting a brilliantly purple black eye.
I squeezed it, and it punched me, she gasped.
And sure enough, they now saw a tiny fist on a long spring protruding from the end of the telescope. Don't worry, said Ron, who was plainly trying not to laugh. Mum'll fix that. She's good at healing minor injuries.
Oh, well, never mind that now, said Hermione hastily. Harry. Oh, Harry.
She sat down on the edge of his bed again.
We wondered after we got back from the ministry. Obviously, we didn't want to say anything to you, but from what Lucius Malfoy said about the prophecy, how it was about you and Voldemort, well, we thought it might be something like this. Oh, Harry.
She stared at him, then whispered,
Are you scared?
Not as much as I was, said Harry. When I first heard it, I was... But now, it seems as though I always knew I'd have to face him in the end. When we heard Dumbledore was collecting you in person, we thought he might be telling you something or showing you something to do with the prophecy, said Ron eagerly. And we were kind of right, weren't we? He wouldn't be giving you lessons if he thought you were a goner. Wouldn't waste his time. He must think you've got a chance.
That's true, said Hermione. I wonder what he'll teach you, Harry. Really advanced defensive magic, probably. Powerful counter curses, anti-jinxes.
Harry did not really listen. A warmth was spreading through him that had nothing to do with the sunlight. A tight obstruction in his chest seemed to be dissolving.